Up to challenge of our rivals, and the last known survivor. It's the thrill of the fight, and it's okay. Whoa! You guys are here. Weird. I was just running to church, and I wound up running in here. Good to see you. You came today, yeah. I'm doing this marathon in November, and I was just out running some training because it's October, it's in November, and I better get myself together because I can only do like a quarter of a mile right now. And I got to run a lot more in a few weeks. And so I'm feeling like a failure. I'm like, oh, dumb Mark. You're just not cutting it. And then I started thinking about like great people that didn't consider failure like fatal. And I started thinking about this guy by the name of Cliff Young. Have I ever told you about Cliff Young? I'm going to tell you about Cliff Young. Are you ready? I mean, Cliff Young was this guy from Australia. He lived in the ruralest part of Australia, and he was a farmer, a potato farmer at that. Do I have any potato farmers in the house? Okay, all right. Well, nonetheless, in 1983, Cliff had a life change because he was 61 years old, and he was still living with his parents. Let's stop for a minute there, all right. Parents, 61 years, can you imagine? Yeah. You're like, get out. So Cliff finally said, hey, I'm going to do something with my life. Let's give it up for a 61-year-old that's going to finally do something with their life, all right? Come on. So he did something bold. Everybody say bold. Bold. He did something bold. He signed up for an ultra marathon. And you might be like, well, what's the big boldness of that? Well, let me tell you a little bit about marathons. Now, I've run a few marathons. I'm not very fast, but I've run them and finish them at least. And it takes the average human being about 4, 5, 6, in my case, 10 hours to finish a 26.2 mile marathon. Now, you got to remember this. I mean, this ultra marathon wasn't just 26.2 miles, but it stretched from Brisbane, Australia, all the way to Melbourne, 550 miles. I mean, that's a long way. And 550 miles breaks down to 78 miles a day that you're running. How many of you are like, no, thank you, I hate running? All right, there's no doubt, all right. But I see you. But at 61, this potato farmer said, I can do it. And Cliff had almost no experience in running marathons, you know. Up to that point, he had grown up on the farm, and he would chase over 2,000 sheep. And that was the training that he had. Everybody give me a good, that's a goat, I'm not sure, or a sheep. Whatever it is, nonetheless, this is what he chased. Over 2,000 of them every single day. And he spent his whole life running after sheep. And I got to say, he was pretty good at it, right? So Cliff decided, he was going to get himself ready for the marathon. And he had to get out the right outfit because if you're going to run, you got to wear the right thing. Am I right? No doubt. And so, he didn't go down to the store and get some running gear. He didn't do any of that. He got a pair of overalls that he bought, you know what I'm saying? The best overalls that he could. And a pair of rain boots, yeah. Because how many of you know that rain boots are amazing for running, right? This won't blister your feet at all. You know what I'm saying? Oh, man, I can feel it. Squishy. All right, thank you. Not too bad, Mia. This was his outfit, rain boots, if you can believe that. And so Cliff started to prepare for the marathon. And you got to know about Cliff's prep. He was a little awkward at 61. And so his arms were lanky and long, and his feet didn't bend so great. And so basically he would run around the farm and just kind of shuffle, and he would chase the sheep. And then he would chase the cows as well. He was chasing them all. Yeah, ride it, woo, moo. This is what Cliff did to prepare for the race. And on race day, he felt that he was ready. After all, he'd grown up on the farm. He knew how to do this. And so he made his way into the city and hit the starting line. And all he could see was an endless line of runners in elite outfits. Shirts that made them run faster. Short shorts that made them run even faster. Amazing, expensive tennis shoes to make them run faster. And Cliff had on, the shirt, this exact shirt that a replica of it that he got from signing up for the marathon, and then a pair of track pants that had holes and paint on them from the farm, and his boots. Oh, yeah. This guy was ready to go. He may have not looked the part, but he definitely felt it. And it was time. And so all the runners got on the line, 550 miles ahead of him, and the gun went off, and Cliff started running. And at first he was kind of in the front of the line, and then he shuffled to the back, and before he knew it, all the runners, all of them were gone, and he couldn't even see them at all in the distance. Everybody say, "Aw." And Cliff was running alone. Now, ultramarathon runners, what they do is they run across Australia, and they run for like 18 hours. And then they take 6 hours and they sleep, and then they get up to run another 18 hours, and they do this for about 7 days. And Cliff was following the plan, and so he got to his first sleep stop. Everybody was already in bed, and so he kind of found a seat and found the best way that he could sleep and set his alarm and tried to go to bed. The buzzer went off quicker than he thought, and he started just running. That's what you do. He didn't know any better. Nobody else was, but he thought they probably will be soon. And so Cliff just started to run across that part of Australia, and he ran and he ran and he ran, and he really never looked back because his alarm was set, unfortunately, by him for 3 hours earlier than anybody else, and he didn't realize it. So he just started running across the country. Now, most elite runners carry with them amazing nutritionists, and they carry all kinds of individuals who can figure out different things that maybe a runner could do better. And Cliff, he just had his van of friends. A white rusty van followed him, and a driver named Wobbles, who would every now and then bring out his nutrition, which was a can of spaghetti. All right, we'll try this, Mia. Oh. A glass of milk out of an old Vegemite jar, pretty good, and boiled pumpkins. Who eats a boiled pumpkin? You know what I'm saying? I don't eat a boiled. There you go, Cindy. You can have that. You can eat the spaghetti. Get out of here, Mia. And he just took the nutrition and ran and ran and ran. And I'm telling you, it wasn't long before the media got attention of this, right? Now, the one thing you got to know about Cliff is he had dentures, and so he would have to take his dentures out because they rattled too loud when he was running, you know what I'm saying? And so he made sure that his dentures were not in his mouth as he ran across this amazing country, right? And he started to do the Cliff Young shuffle, and the media started to get a hold of this, and he kind of became sort of the butt of everybody's joke. And so reporters would run up next to him and say, "Cliff, what is your secret to success?" And he would go, "Oh yeah, you just keep running." Yep, you just keep running. And that's what he kept doing. He just kept running. One reporter actually ran with him for a distance and said, "Cliff, you make it across the finish line. You're in first place. What are you going to do?" Well, Cliff was so genuine, he just said what he really would do. And he looked out and looked into the camera and said, "Well, I just run to the toilet." Because that's what he thought you should do. You know what I'm saying? And after a while, people started to grab hold that a 61-year-old farmer was literally running across the nation, and they started to get hold of it. And Cliff went from being the butt of everybody's joke to suddenly becoming a media star, and he didn't even know it. People were coming out from their homes in the villages they were running through, and they wanted to see the Cliff Young Shuffle. And he would run by, and they would scream, and he would think, "Wow, these runners must be ahead of me because there's no way these people are there for me." And as he hit the outskirts of Melbourne, getting closer to the finish line, this time, at this point, it had been days, only sleeping 3 hours a night, less than that. But Cliff just kept running. There were so many people that were lining the streets to see this 61-year-old come into Melbourne that this potato farmer had to have a police escort. And so he made his way into that final stretch again, not really knowing what place he was in, he just knew that he was going to finish the race. And so he hit the finish line, and he did what he said he was going to do. The first thing, he ran to the toilet. And he ran to the nearest outhouse, and he got inside and, did his business. And then when he opened the door and stepped out, he couldn't believe what he saw. But all over, hundreds of cameras flashing, pictures being taken, video being recorded. This 61-year-old was finally finished and had won the race. He had won the race. Cliff was in first place. 5 days, 15 hours, and 4 minutes. And maybe that doesn't mean very much to you, but you need to know this, that the ultra marathon, at that point, the nearest time was just far from that, because Cliff beat it by 2 days. This was a world record, an Australian record. This little Australian potato farmer. And so what did Cliff do when he made his way in? And he said, well, what are we doing next? What's for the prize? And they brought him out a check for over $10,000. Unexpected. This check right here, this is similar to what they put in his hands. And I love his genuine spirit, because he said, I don't need this. And he wound up breaking it up. And so the next 5 runners each got $2,000. Not bad, Mia, right? $2,000 for 550 miles. Okay. But he didn't need it for himself. And here's the thing about Cliff, is he wasn't in it for the money. He was in it to say to himself that you can overcome. He was in it to partner with God, to believe that anything is possible, even from a 61-year-old farmer. And we have much to learn from that. With boots and ripped pants and a worn shirt, this guy did the impossible, and so can you. And it reminds me of the Apostle Paul, who in Philippians is writing to the Philippian church, and he's reminding them that there's more in them, because they were facing persecution. They were facing death on the spot for being a Christian. They were facing hardship and all kinds of struggles. And he says, forget what is behind, my friends, but press on towards what is ahead, what God is doing ahead, because the prize you are pressing for is seeing Jesus Christ face to face. Don't give up. And I say to you, my friends, no matter what you're pressing through today, remember Cliff, and remember this: just keep running.